By the age of 19, I started my first online business and I made my first six figures at age 22. By 25, I made over $1 million online business. And today I'm going to share with you guys exactly how to make more money in your business without changing any strategy up. Nowadays, what I do is I help high level entrepreneurs and high performers rewire their identity so they can expand their potential, make more money, and also create more fulfillment. So today I'm going to share with you, there was a period of time in my business where I was stuck at a plateau for over 3 years and nothing would change until I went to this retreat in Hawaii and I completely shattered my identity, who I thought I was. And I came back 2 months later and doubled my business revenue. And I didn't need to change anything whatsoever. And that's exactly what I'm going to share with you guys today. So if you like this training, make sure you like and subscribe, and let's dive into the whiteboard. All right, guys. So first and foremost, if you want this to actually work, you need to be making over 5K per month, because the reason why is basically you need to make sure you already have a strategy established. You need to make sure you're established and you have a system already in place. So let's draw out kind of what your system might already look like, especially if you're doing online business. So there's a few boxes that goes into it. First and foremost is you need an offer, and typically you need a nice niche. Biggest thing I see nowadays in business, especially online business, is that the more niche that you can get, the way easier it is going to be to grow your business. But we're not talking about strategy today. I'm just breaking down the first things that are needed in order for this training to actually make sense for you. So you have an offer and you have a niche, and then you need some sort of marketing, right? So that could be content, that could be advertisements, whatever it may be. You need to get eyeballs in the door. And then you need a sales, we'll say process. So sales process, right? You need this proper sales process, however you want to go about it. If you do sell by chat, if you have a setter, if you do DMs, if you do sales calls, you need an actual proven sales process that works. And then you need to actually give the client the right service. And then perhaps you have also a retention. And that's mostly it, right? So you have to have at least some sort of system in your business first in order for this to work. Once you have an established strategy down, now we can dive into how do you actually level up your business. So here's how I want you to think about it. So let's say right now you are, 5 to 10K per month right now. And your goal is you want to get to 50K per month and beyond. Maybe it's 30K, whatever it may be. You want to hit this new level. Okay. What does this new level require? Oftentimes we think that this new level requires more new things, right? I need a new sales strategy. I need more new lead magnets. I need a different funnel. I'll tell you right now, you don't need anything new to go from 10K to 50K per month. What you actually need to do is you simply just need to get better. You just need to refine how you are doing what you're already doing. For example, you adopt a new identity, you get better at sales, for example, and your closing rate's at 30%, you bump that up to 40, 50%. That's going to make a drastic difference in your revenue long term. So we need to go from 10K to 50K per month. Instead of adding more new, it's not about that. It's about upgrading who you already are. And this is where the identity work comes in. I want you to think of it like this. So imagine there's pipes, okay? And there's water flowing down these pipes. Oops. And let me delete that. So there's water flowing down these pipes. And imagine that this 10K bucket, or this 10K per month, is now 10 gallons. Okay. So this is 50 gallons and this is 10 gallons. All right. So these are buckets here. And this is the pipe and it's flowing out water. All right. What's going to happen, how a lot of business owners think, is that if I want to make more money, I need to speed up the water flow. I need to get more water flowing into this bucket, and that way I'm going to make more money. But what happens when this 10-gallon bucket fills to 10 gallons? It's going to start overflowing. And this is where, when the overflowing happens, this is where, as an entrepreneur in real time, you start to self sabotage. You start to slow down. You start to procrastinate. You start to distract yourself. You allow fear to stop you in your tracks to do the things that you need to do to get to where you want to go. All right. Same. So, how do you get from 10 gallons to 50 gallons? If you don't speed up the pipe and the water flow, what do you do? right? The pipe, the water flow, the example is you work harder, etc. So if that's not the root, how do you actually fill up a 10-gallon bucket and make it 50 gallons of water? Well, you can't. You need to expand the bucket. You need a bigger bucket. And now think of bucket as identity. Your identity determines the capacity of what you can handle in your life. And I'll explain here why in a second. So, how does that work? How does it work when it comes to your identity? I want you to think of it like this. So this is what I do when I work with my one-to-one clients. So we all have an identity baseline. So think of this as your baseline. Okay. So this is your identity baseline. And that's what is basically comfortable because your identity, so what your identity is who you believe you are. And how the brain works, how you function in reality, is that your brain doesn't care about the truth or if you're successful. It basically is just trying to reconfirm what you already believe to be true in reality. So your beliefs, your identity is basically the instruction manual for your brain to then go follow and recreate that in real time over and over and over again. So if your current identity baseline right now, let's say you grew up in a household where the average income was 50K per year, was 100K per year, and your parents always stressed about money and they had a hard conversations around money and money was very scarce. That is going to be integrated into your personal identity more than likely. So now you have an identity where money is scarce. So you have a hard time investing it. You're always stressed and worried about losing money. If you have a down month in your business, you make that personal. You relate to that and it affects you badly. That is an example of an identity baseline. So it's all these beliefs that form your identity, who you believe you are, and that is how you then function in reality. So what happens is that when the pain of staying at this baseline gets hot enough, you then start to change. Maybe this changes you invest into a coach, a mentor, maybe you buy a book, maybe you take more actions, message more people, you start to advertise, whatever it may be. And usually what will happen here is you start to get a little bit of success. So you start to get a little bit of success, you're starting to make more changes. And this is where the identity mismatch happens. Identity mismatch is basically where your identity and your actions are no longer in alignment. So you're acting out of alignment. You're acting out of alignment with who you believe you are. And that's where you hit your threshold. And then so you want to go up here, right? The goal is to go up here so that way you can make a lot more money and actually sustain it long term. But the problem is as soon as you pass this threshold, this is where you start to get anxious. Okay, you start to slow down, you start procrastinating, you start to do weird things that may not really make sense, but it's kind of a cycle, it's a pattern that keeps happening over and over and over again. It's like this invincible ceiling that you keep hitting over and over and over again. And maybe for you it's 10K, maybe it's 30K, maybe it's 50K, whatever it may be. Sometimes you'll break through, but then you quickly collapse back down to your identity baseline. Okay. So that's what's happening right here is you're having an identity mismatch where your actions are no longer aligned with who you believe you are. And now your nervous system is acting up and it's basically saying, hey, we don't want this change. This is too far out of our comfort zone. If you go past this threshold, it's uncertain. It's not safe. So we want to try to reject this at all costs. Also, what happens is that your ego starts to jump in and it sneaks up on you. And how it sneaks up on you because your ego is protector of identity, right? So your ego wants you to be down here because this is your current identity baseline. So ego will jump in by almost influencing thoughts. And what I mean by that is you'll have thoughts of like, okay, I'll take more days off, or I'll recklessly spend this money, or money's going to keep coming in, so I'm just going to keep spending it, or whatever it may be. You'll do things that you know aren't really the best actions, but you'll start to do them anyways. Or you'll have ideas of like, okay, well, I'll just do that later. I'll put that off. I'll message these people later. And you start doing these weird actions that don't help you grow any farther. And that's the ego because the ego will basically send these thoughts, influence these thoughts. And then what happens is we personalize with those thoughts. So we identify and personalize with those thoughts, and then we take actions based off those thoughts. So then what happens is the self-sabotage cycle. So there's about four forms of self-sabotage. I won't go into that today. But basically, you might self-sabotage, so you'll procrastinate, you might wait, you might slow down, you might not really try anymore on sales calls, Again, you might unconsciously spend a lot of your money. You might find yourself in chaos with money because maybe you believe that money equals stress. That was a cycle I was stuck in. I used to believe that money is stressful to make. So every time I made a lot of money, I would have to find a way to create chaos in my life. So for me, it was unconsciously spending it, investing too hard to try to grow the business. And then I'd get stressed out, anxious, overwhelmed. And it was just a nasty cycle over and over and over again. And you self sabotage all the way back down to identity baseline. All right. So now that we know this, how do we raise the identity baseline? How do we get the identity baseline up to this level? So that way we can actually hold the capacity for this new amount of money. So we can actually make this more money. And here's the craziest thing that I'll tell you is that when I work with my high level one-on-one clients, we barely ever talk about strategy. And the reason why we don't really talk about strategy is because I know how the mind works. And basically, if I can get you to believe differently about yourself, if I can get you to change your identity, who you believe you are and what you're worthy of and deserving of, what's going to happen, how the brain works is you are then going to naturally go find the path to reconfirm that new belief in reality. So if you change your beliefs to the point where you are that person, you identify as that person who's making 50K, 100K per month, whatever it may be, what's going to happen is that your brain is going to support that. It's going to try to recreate that in reality. You literally have this thing called the RAS. This is your reticular activating system. And basically, what this does is it filters out 99.999% of reality and it hyper focuses in on what you already believe to be true. Here's an example. For me, when I was stuck at that plateau and I had these very disempowering money beliefs and worth beliefs and all these things, and I was stuck at this plateau, this threshold for so long, it was basically like in my town, the person who would be making the most money in my town that I kind of knew, that's kind of the threshold that I was stuck at. And I really had a hard time breaking beyond that. And it's crazy because when I changed my identity, when I did this work and I learned more and more deeper about how powerful this stuff actually is, what's crazy is that the opportunity to change my like how I did things and to add on certain things, like for example, adding on a better retention program, better fulfillment for the clients, changing the pricing, the offer structure, little tiny adjustments like that and also just overall getting better as a leader for my team and everything. The things that helped me do that and change that, all the information was already there. All the information was there from the very start. But I could not tap into that information. Literally, my mind was rejecting that information, or I could not actually absorb it to the point where it was actually useful and beneficial for me. And that's simply because it wasn't aligned with who I already believed I was. So I would not apply that information. Kind of crazy to think about that the exact answers that you need are right in front of your face more often than not. We have ChatGPT nowadays. We have AI. Like we live in an age of information. Everything you need is right in front of your face. But it's probably being rejected because it's not in alignment with who you currently believe you are, your identity baseline. So, how do we raise this identity? Well, this comes to question two. How do I change my identity, right? How do I rewire my identity to grow my capacity to handle more? This comes down to the question of how is identity formed? Okay, so this is I as an identity. Identity naturally influences focus, behaviors, actions, even eventually habits in a way, we'll say, decisions that we make or don't make. And all of these things then produce what? They produce results, right? So if you want new results, you need a new identity. Now, identity is created through so how identity is created is basically neurons that fire together wire together. So what I mean by that is that as you because your mind doesn't know the difference between reality and imagination. So as you consistently hold a thought and emotion together, so you have a thought, you're imagining a scenario, a situation, yourself, and a certain thing, whatever it may be, and then you experience the emotion behind that, the more and more and more and more that you do that, eventually you're going to buy into that as if it's real. Okay, you're going to believe it to be true. Identity is who you believe you are. So thought and emotion held over time create identity. Now the question is, where does emotion and thought come from? Okay, well, I'll tell you, they come from the same place. So you want to think of it like this. You are not your thoughts, you're the receiver of your thoughts. So imagine this is you right here, right? And you have this little antenna and you are picking up these thoughts from something else. And your emotions, so I don't know if you knew this or not, but basically you cannot experience an emotion randomly. What you must have is you must have an interpretation. You must interpret something in order for you to have an emotion, right? So you can do that in your mind. You can visualize a situation, a scenario. You can have a real event in real time. Then you quickly have an interpretation. You quickly assign meaning to that situation, and that then causes you to feel the emotion that you feel. So where does interpretation come from? How does that get influenced? It comes from the same place that your thoughts come from. And you know what that is? Is that is your core belief systems. Not religious belief systems, don't get me wrong, overall belief systems. Believe money is abundant. I believe money is scarce. I believe the world is evil. I believe sales is a bad thing. I believe money is super hard to make. I believe that I'm worthy. I believe that I'm not good enough. Those are all belief systems, all belief systems. So the more disempowering belief systems that you have, and especially when it comes to business, that can be around sales, psychology, or people, that can be around money, success, being a CEO, an entrepreneur. You want to really dissect those beliefs. And I'll tell you, the people who make the lowest amount of money and fail the most in business is because they have the most disempowering belief systems around business, sales, money, etc. It's how it works. It's literally just how your mind, how your brain functions. It's how you function in reality. Your brain must follow your belief systems like they are literal instructions to function. It must follow them. So if you change your belief systems, if you upgrade your beliefs, so we'll say these are beliefs. Okay, so disempowering beliefs would be like money equals evil, right? Good ones equals money equals abundance. Okay, money equals good, whatever it may be. All right, I live in an abundant world. Those are proper belief systems. But what happens is as you change your belief systems, what's going to happen is you're going to start to then have new thoughts, new emotions, which then form a new identity, which then change how you show up and take action, which then changes the results that you get in your life. This is why they always say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a change. You need, and this is why they always talk about too the hero's journey. The hero's journey is not a one-time thing. The hero's journey is a constant cycle. Okay, you want to think of growth like this. It's a constant cycle. You're always being challenged at every single new level. Every single new level that you hit, it demands a new version of you that can actually handle that success. What a lot of entrepreneurs do, and you'll notice a lot of them are very depressed and unhappy, is because they try to force themselves to the result. They try to force and force and force and force. And as a person, you are so strong and powerful that, yeah, in a way, you can force that to happen. You do enough actions in the right direction over time, you'll force yourself there. But I will tell you, that is the biggest lie when it comes to success because the biggest lie in entrepreneurship is where you make all the money, but you feel miserable inside. What is the point at the end of the day of that, right? You have one life. Why would you want to be miserable, depressed, and hate your life just to make all this money? Why not have the best of both worlds? So if you expand your identity in the right way and your belief systems about yourself, how you function in reality, how things work, etc., you will not only make more money and expand your business, but the fulfillment will also come with it as well. So back to what I was saying is better belief systems will create a better identity. And naturally, and this is what again why we don't really need to touch strategy, because naturally, as who you believe you are changes your identity, how you show up, how you take action, how you think about things, how you view situations will all change in time as you stay consistent and embody this new identity. And every new action has a new result. So it compounds over time, and that's where the real changes start to happen in your life. So that's the key right there is changing the belief systems. And then, of course, there's a whole process of changing identity, but that's the work that I do with my one-to-one clients. And then again, as you do so, what's going to happen is instead of the old cycle of what, so let me just draw this out again. So again, this is the way we want to go, right? Because this is the path to making more money. All right. And what I did before is the identity mismatch. So basically, it's like this. So we want to break this cycle right here, this self-sabotage, right? And we want to make it so, yeah, you're going to constrict because you got to go and you got to experience the bad so you can experience the good, right? If you don't know what the bad is, you don't know what the good is. So you constrict, you go through these challenges, you learn the lessons, whatever it may be. And if you do it properly, though, you break the cycle and you continue to expand. You continue to expand your identity, you continue to expand your growth, etc. And as you do that, you continue to do that. It's a never-ending cycle, and you will continue and continue to grow. And as you grow, as a side effect, the business grows as well. Especially if you are a content creator, if you're an online business owner, and you are the brand, it all starts with you. How does a stock go up? A stock goes up because it becomes more valuable, right? So it's the same thing with you. You become more valuable. Expand your belief systems. Believe in more. Because literally, the more you believe in yourself, the more you show up and act that way, and the more you be that way, and the more results you get that way. It's like the saying goes, as within, so without. So that's the training there, guys. Now, if this really hits home and resonates with you, and you are an online business owner or a high performer, like an athlete, whatever it may be, professional in your sport, and you're making over 5K per month, but you're struggling right now to break through, to make more money, to expand yourself, then I would love to help you out. If you want some one-to-one, you can apply down below. Now, make sure you like and subscribe as well for more. Appreciate you guys being here and watching this. If you have any more questions, drop them down below in the comments. And I'll see you next time.